Yeah, this is it.
Eight to close the time.
Are we? Yeah, I think it's working. Okay, because look, can we just look at
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Siyyum ceremony for our Rising Voices Fellows. Do I assume that everybody is here and we can start? Yes? Great. So my name is Roz Garber Toledano, and I am a past member of the board of the Jewish Women's Archive, a former treasurer, and currently I serve on the Finance Committee and the Investment Committee. I was actually at a meeting in the mid-90s when Dr. Gail Reamer, our former founding director, described her dream for this amazing organization. And ever since, I have been a strong supporter and partner, even co-hosting the first Women Who Dared event when I was the executive director of Hadassah, Boston. In case you don't know, the Jewish Women's Archive is a national organization dedicated to collecting and promoting the extraordinary stories of Jewish women. JWA explores the past as a framework for understanding the important issues to women today, inspires young people with remarkable role models, and uses Jewish women's stories to excite people to see themselves as agents of change. The website is the world's largest collection of information on Jewish women and draws more than 1.5 million visitors a year seeking information, inspiration, community, and a sense of identity. As an avid consumer of JWA content, I have some very favorite parts of the website. For instance, the Power Couples exhibit showcases pairs of extraordinary Jewish women from many different disciplines, matching an early female trailblazer with a modern woman at the top of her game. This project highlights the lives and accomplishments of important pioneers in various fields and the next generation of leaders and innovators, demonstrating the impact of women in the arts, science, fashion, business, and activism. For example, Shelley Winters and Natalie Portman, two actors who gracefully navigated Hollywood's contradictory attitude towards Jews. Or Bobby Rosenfeld and Aly Raisman, who both won Olympic gold medals against fierce competition, but competed in vastly different worlds. I'll always remember my trip with JWA to New Orleans, where we met Jewish victims of Katrina. We documented their emotional and heartfelt stories in Katrina's Jewish Voices collection, also found on our site. JWA offers an encyclopedia that features over 1,700 biographies, 300 thematic essays, and 1,400 photographs and illustrations on a wide range of Jewish women through the centuries, from Gertrude Berg to Gertrude Stein, Hannah Greenbaum Solomon to Hannah Arendt, the biblical Ruth to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a wonderful, rich resource for students, scholars, rabbis, everyone. Since 1972, when rabbinical schools began ordaining women, women rabbis have transformed Jewish life around the world. In partnership with the Story Archive of Women Rabbis, a project of the Jewish Women's Theater, JWA has created this exhibit using video clips of women rabbis from across the Jewish spectrum, telling powerful stories about their role models and leadership styles, their faith and their families, and the challenges and blessings that they have encountered along the way. Another favorite of mine is This Week in History, which offers a unique calendar of American Jewish experience, connecting specific dates through history to an array of compelling historical events related to American Jewish women. I like to send a tidbit of our history that corresponds with a loved one's birthday. We remember this online collection contains reminiscences of a variety of recently deceased American Jewish women who made a difference in their community and beyond. My beloved mother-in-law's memory is honored in this collection. You can find a variety of lesson plans that address topics such as women's involvement in the civil rights and labor movements, the developing role of women in Jewish ritual life, Jewish women's contributions from art to politics, and much more. From collections, programs, education, and multimedia, you can find it all on our website. And with the creativity and ingenuity of our leader, Dr. Judith Rosenbaum, and her staff, JWA keeps growing and indeed accomplishes our mission of documenting Jewish women's stories in so many creative ways, elevating their voices and inspiring them to be agents of change. Speaking of agents of change, today we celebrate the accomplishments of our Rising Voices Fellows, our Jewish feminist thought leaders of today and tomorrow. Founded in 2013, the Rising Voices Fellowship is a 10-month program for female-identified Jewish teens in 10th through 12th grades who are strong writers and passionate about Judaism, feminism, and social justice. Through the program, participants develop authentic voices, strengthen their leadership through writing, and begin to influence the important conversation of Jewish and feminist communities. Fellows write blog posts each month, which are published on jwa.org. During monthly webinars and 3 in-person retreats in the Boston area, fellows explore their Jewish feminist identities in a pluralistic environment, learning from inspiring leaders and mentors. As fellows graduate from the program and move on to college and careers, they are invited to join the RVF Alumni Network, where they continue to build and strengthen their connections with each other and broaden their impact on the world around them. This program is funded in part by a grant from the Hadassah Foundation, of which I am a proud board member. The Hadassah Foundation is an investor in social change to empower women and girls in the United States and in Israel. The young women graduating today make up our 5th cohort of Rising Voices. The program has grown tremendously since its inception. In our first year, we had 6 fellows, and the past 3 years, we have had cohorts of 12 to 14. This coming fall, we will welcome 18 new fellows into the program, our largest group yet. The continued high level of interest in this program shows us that Jewish women are hungry for opportunities to share their stories and opinions with the wider world, and to commit themselves to social justice through leadership in their own communities and beyond. To our fellows, you are a part of a long line of inspiring Jewish women, and your contributions to the world will write the next chapters of Jewish women's history. All of us in the JWA community are so proud of what you've accomplished this year, and we can't wait to see what you'll do next. To everyone here today, thank you again for celebrating with us, and enjoy the program.
Thank you so much, Roz, for that wonderful introduction and welcome to everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you again so much for being here with us today to celebrate our Rising Voices Fellows. My name is Larissa Cleve. I am the Associate Director of Programs and Education at the Jewish Women's Archive. I'm really lucky because I get to work closely with our fellows almost every single day, whether it's editing their blog posts, annoying them with my incessant reminders about deadlines, or hanging out with them during webinars and retreats. Through all of these various interactions, I get a front row seat to our fellows' growth and development throughout the year. I had a really hard time deciding what I wanted to talk about today. In fact, I'm still deciding right now as I speak. So much happened this year, both in the fellowship and out in the world. And I feel like there are so many stories I could tell which would convey just how incredible these young women sitting before me are. I finally decided that I'd tell the story of our fellows' response to the Parkland school shooting. About a week after, I received an email from one of our fellows. She expressed that she and many of the other fellows felt incredibly troubled and helpless. She said, "I propose that we write our feelings down and use our writing to bring about change." Many fellows wrote beautiful reflections and calls to action, and the cohort as a whole helped to promote the final product and push it out into the world. If you haven't yet had a chance to read their compelling words, I hope you'll visit our blog and read this piece. I want to stress that this project was completed with minimal help from JWA staff. This was the fellows' project, and they owned it. I've said this before, and I'm sure I'll say it again. Our fellows are certainly the leaders of tomorrow, but they are also the leaders of today. This year, the rest of the world realized something that I think a lot of us in this room know already, and that is that teenagers get stuff done. They are passionate, they are young and spry, they know how our government works, and they are determined to make the world a better place. In some ways, it was kind of frustrating to see that people were so shocked by the teen-led movement that emerged post-Parkland. I can equate this to a less serious example. In 2011, the movie Bridesmaids, a woman-led comedy, came out, and all of a sudden, people were like, "Oh my God, women can be funny. Who knew?" Did you know that women could be funny? And I think a lot of us were like, yeah, we did know that women could be funny. I think both of these examples are reminders that it's important to be aware of and to look to our history. Just because we're talking about something right now doesn't mean it's the first time it's ever happened. A big part of this fellowship is focused on history, specifically Jewish women's history. And our fellows are encouraged to see themselves as part of a long line of Jewish women and to see their present actions as history in the making. To the fellows, I am so proud of each and every one of you for all you've accomplished this year. I feel incredibly honored to be part of your journey, and I truly can't wait to see how you all continue to grow and to shape your own communities as well as the wider world. Now onto the main event. We're really here today to hear from our fellows. They are each going to share an excerpt from one of their blog posts from this year. I do want to emphasize that these are excerpts, so I encourage you to visit our blog to read more of their work. Thank you.
I'd now like to welcome Julia Clardy, my peer editor throughout the course of RVF. Julia is from Lexington, Massachusetts, waist-free, and has a nose ring. But, while these things are deeply cool and intriguing, Julia truly is one of the funniest, most intentional, uniquely spiritual people I have ever met. Having the privilege to work closely with Julia has been so wonderful, so here she is.
Religion and spirituality had pretty much no presence in my life until I was 5, when I met the woman who would become my stepmother and her 2 daughters. My stepmother and stepsisters are Jewish, and it was only after meeting them that I began learning what religion means to other people. If you've ever read Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume, you'll be familiar with the main character Margaret's search for religious connection. I embarked on a similar journey as I was fascinated by religion and hungry to learn more. What attracted me to Judaism was the emphasis on conversation. I didn't have to know everything right away, and I still find that very compelling. At 9 years old, I decided that I wanted to convert. My experience at the mikveh, a ritual bath where conversions and other Jewish life cycle events are marked, was powerfully Jewish and also powerfully feminist. As I began this new chapter of my life, I was supported by several powerful Jewish women, including my aunt, my stepmother, and the rabbi who performed my conversion. Wrapped in a long white sheet, I walked towards the steps of the mikveh. Once I entered the warm water, I was instructed to turn the red crank on the wall. This let the rainwater into the bath, and I was told that this meant the water was now alive. The rabbi then told me to fully submerge myself. Underwater, I opened my eyes. Lights had been turned on in the bath, the colors shifting from green to purple in the water. My body was completely weightless, and my dark hair floated around my head. It was silent. My face broke the surface of the water. I inhaled again and recited 2 blessings in Hebrew, repeating after the rabbi. My conversion was a new beginning in many ways. This was the first time I felt the power of spirituality, and with my aunt and stepmother as incredible Jewish role models, the power of womanhood. These 2 ideas are bonded and intertwined completely in my mind, like the many wicks of the Havdalah candle. To me, being part of the Jewish tradition means being surrounded by strong Jewish women. This is Natalie, and I have had the absolute delight of getting to know her better this year. Natalie is truly one of the kindest, most generous, and truly supportive people, and I'm so inspired by her body positivity work and her general spirit. Natalie, thank you so much for being such a bright presence in the group, and I'm so excited for your future and the world bettering in store for you after RBF. Once a month, I meet with about 10 other Jewish girls as a part of the Rosh Chodesh program, and we talk about the impact our female identities have on our daily lives and within Judaism. Earlier this year, we discussed a Torah portion that rattled the foundation of my identity as a Jewish woman. In Genesis 12:10 to 12:20, Abram and his wife Sarai go to Egypt to flee a famine. Abram asks Sarai to pretend to be his sister so that the Pharaoh might reward Abram because of her. Abram's plan works, and when the woman Sarai was taken to Pharaoh's palace, Abram receives benefits from the Pharaoh. In other words, because Abram lets Pharaoh sleep with Sarai, Abram reaped the benefits. As far as I can tell, Sarai never consented to Abram's plan. Regardless of the fact that this text is a part of Judaism, the religion I am committed to and hold really, really dear, there's no way I can stand by the idea that it is okay to treat women as possessions. According to the Torah, these events happened. Whether we like it or not, they are a part of our tradition. I don't want to totally ignore this text. What I want is more of this story. What happened next? Did Abram feel badly for the way he treated his wife? Did Sarai feel betrayed or taken advantage of? Did this negatively affect Abram and Sarai's relationship? And if so, how did they work past that? Or did they work past that? I feel similarly about the #MeToo movement and all of the sexual abuse allegations coming to light. Like Sarai, these women's bodies have been exploited for the benefit of men without their consent. Because of the many repercussions associated with women sharing their stories, these stories often stay hidden. But now, thanks to things like the #MeToo movement and more widespread support of women coming forward, more of these stories are being told. So what happened next in Abram and Sarai's story? We may never know. What will happen in this still developing story about the epidemic of sexual harassment and abuse in this country? Well, that's up to us. We can't rewrite history, but we can change the narrative about women who speak up about sexual assault. By believing them and by supporting them and by making it clear that what they endured is not and never will again be acceptable. Sophia Garden-Schwartz is a constant inspiration and light in our world. She brings an inexplicable sense of genuineness to her articles, insightful and meaningful conversations, and every interaction she takes part in. Sophie, it has been an honor to learn from you and be empowered and inspired by you this year. I cannot wait to hear all of the world-changing things that you're going to continue to tell us and for everybody to hear from you now.
I'm the president of a nonprofit, Serving Spoons, that prepares and delivers healthy, home-cooked meals to families in need. I accepted this leadership position nearly 5 years ago, and though I expected to encounter some pushback due to my age, I felt confident I could convince the other industry professionals to take me seriously if I demonstrated maturity, responsibility, and commitment to my organization. What I didn't expect was to face questions about my capability to lead the organization because of my gender. This challenge is a quintessential representation of what feminist theory has dubbed the women's double bind, the idea that women are held to two unachievable standards. They're expected to be personal and nice, as gender stereotypes dictate, but are also subject to the prejudices ingrained in our culture that equate leadership with masculinity. Looking at the food industry, it appears that my experience is a common one. You wouldn't think that gender discrimination would be such a big issue in the kitchen. After all, women have long been told that's where they belong. At first glance, it appears that women do well in this area, occupying 55% of food preparation and serving related occupations. But a closer examination of this data reveals that despite this majority in the industry as a whole, women hold only 22% of the chef or head cook positions. What's more, the pay gap in food service is the second highest in the entire country. So where does that leave me? As I prepare to go to college next year, I'm confronted with a startling reality. Not only will I have to leave serving spoons behind, but my ability to get involved with another organization that combines my passions for food and service work may be limited by gender bias. I love to cook and could even see myself working in a professional kitchen one day, but how likely is it that I will ever be an executive chef? And even if I was, would I be paid the same as my male counterparts? It's a depressing forecast, but one that I hope to change with my activism and that of my fellow feminist comrades. So next up we have Minna. Minna's bubbly personality and carefree laughter always light up the room. Her quick wit and polished prose leave a smile on your face, whether you've spent time with her in person or whether you've read her work on the blog. I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know Minna over this last year, and it's my pleasure to introduce her to read this next piece.
Every year in July, the story of Pinchas is told. And on July 6, 2013, I was the one telling the story. Yep, 13-year-old me, electric braces and all, was on the bema, knees knocking, chanting the story of Pinchas. And I did a great job too, if I do say so myself. But I spent so much time making sure I knew how to chant the Hebrew correctly that I didn't put as much effort into fully understanding what I was saying. It wasn't until I read Pinchas as a 17-year-old that I saw the story as a feminist one. The portion opens with a man, Pinchas, killing his girlfriend and her lover, and then being rewarded for his deed. His girlfriend was the princess of the Midianite people, and a people who posed a threat to the Israelites, and God saw her murder as an honorable act. God then decided that a census needed to be drawn up so that the land could be portioned out. The underlying goal being to break up the princess's people and dilute their ability to go to war with the Israelites. Enter the founding feminists. 5 sisters approach Moses and argue that since their father had no sons, they should get his portion of the land. Moses had no idea what to do, so he talked to God, and God made a new decree on inheritance. When a man dies without sons, his daughters shall inherit. Who knew there were feminist activists in 5th century BCE? When we consider that the Torah was written by men, it's not surprising that we don't see many examples of women taking leadership on important issues, like inspiring new laws. So when we do see it, it's important that we pay attention and also recognize that there are probably many other similar stories that didn't get written down and we don't get to hear. I can honestly say that I will never read Torah the same way again. Now I will always wonder what text isn't being said and whose stories aren't being told. I'm so grateful for these 5 women who sparked my interest in the consequences of the Torah's authorship. These women, these founding feminists, are my teachers, my mentors, and my role models. This is Shira. She is one of the funniest and nicest people I have ever met, and she lights up every room that she walks into. Her writing is thought-provoking and inspiring, and I am so lucky to have gotten to know her. We are all better people for knowing her.
So obviously Shira is not able to be here today, so we are going to play a video recording of her reading. And hopefully it will work.
It's hard to admit I'm not an expert when it comes to race. I do my best to be as informed as possible, But as a privileged white woman, I recognize I'll never be able to fully understand systemic racism and how it affects people of color. On a trip to the American South, though, my eyes were opened further. On the trip, I explored the evolution of our criminal justice system, the civil rights movement, and the Reconstruction era. I met with a freedom rider, the youngest woman to march at Selma, and Rosa Parks' lawyer. Our final destination was Martin Luther King's home in Georgia. Sitting near Dr. King's front lawn, ruminating on this transformative trip, I was troubled. It wasn't just the pain of grappling with modern racism. I was uneasy about how surprised I was by all of this new information. Previously, I considered myself a fierce ally in the fight for racial equality. In my majority white, all Jewish school, I was often a vocal advocate for equal rights. But after the trip, I realized I was also oblivious to certain elements of the Black experience. I always wanted to be as well informed as possible so I could promote equality and so people of color would see me as an ally. But this trip made me realize that's not what being an ally is about. As an ally, I shouldn't be at the center of the fight for racial equality. When I realized how uninformed I truly was, I also realized that I needed to listen harder and more carefully to the voices of those being marginalized. I want to be as active as possible when it comes to discussions about racial issues, but I've come to understand that being a true ally isn't about speaking louder, it's about listening harder. It feels a little awkward for me to reflect on the lessons I've learned, because I don't want to make this about me. At the same time, in order to determine how to be the best possible ally, I also need to rethink how my own racial identity and privilege play into this issue, even contribute to it. I want to grapple with that discomfort and turn it into action.
So since Shira was not able to be here, I'm going to read the introduction that she wrote for Sophia. I'd now like to introduce someone who, despite not being able to attend the first retreat, has been an integral part of this cohort since day one. An LA native, her warm, energetic, and kind presence was easily felt from miles away. I'm glad to introduce the very bright and thoughtful Sophia Heller.
My mom has worked as an entertainment lawyer my whole life. For the majority of that time, she's worked in a job share with another mom. Last year, she started working full-time as the head of her department. When my mom told me she was going to take the job, I began to reflect on the type of role model she is and the impact she's had on my development. I'm not able to pinpoint when I first started referring to myself as a feminist. However, I fought for women's rights and equality for as long as I can remember. I've always felt emboldened to speak up for causes in which I believe, and I owe that to my mom. Watching my mom navigate the workforce, I had my first look into the glaring double standards for women. For the duration of her job share, my mom's bosses remained uncomfortable advancing women who placed an emphasis on their kids, despite it having no negative effects on their work. When one of my mom's male bosses took a long lunch break to go to a parent-teacher conference, he was being a good dad. When my mom did the same, she was compromising her dedication to the job. And if my mom worked too many hours, she was neglecting her duty as a mother. These messages were cemented by the wage gap between my mom and her male colleagues. These inequalities were personal to me as they affected my mom, and the anger and confusion I felt eventually contributed to my feminist awakening. My mom also taught me how to approach Judaism from a feminist standpoint, thus deepening and expanding my feminist identity. Around 6th grade, she compiled a booklet describing the story of Passover, but with a slant toward the role that Miriam, Moses' sister, had. The booklet has since accompanied the traditional Haggadah at our Passover Seders. I couldn't be prouder of my mom. Because of her, I don't worry that I can't accomplish my goals because of my gender. However, I recognize that I'm extremely privileged to feel so assured and to have a mother who has shown me that I deserve equality and that I should reach high. Now I'm going to introduce Josie.
Josie was my peer editor, so I got to know her through Google Doc comments. Every time I got an email notification that Josie had commented on my piece, I knew that I was going to open edits that were both extremely sweet and insightful, which is exactly how I would describe her. I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know her this year through retreats, amazing blog posts, and Google Doc comments, and I'm very honored to introduce her to Read today.
One afternoon, when I was in the 7th grade, my Hebrew teacher, Sarah, was wearing a shirt that read Sarah and Rebecca and Rachel and Leah and Bilhah and Zilpah. The first 4 names, the names of the matriarchs, are familiar to me. I had heard these names for as long as I could remember at synagogue, but I had never heard the last 2 names before. When I asked Sarah who they were, I didn't know that her answer would be my introduction to the intersection between Judaism and feminism. Sarah explained to me that Bilhah and Zilpah were handmaidens of Rachel and Leah, who were given to the sisters by their father. Bilhah and Zilpah gave birth to 4 sons, fathered by Jacob, who became the heads of 4 of the 12 tribes of Israel. Bilhah and Zilpah were slaves, not wives of a patriarch, but their descendants eventually became the Jewish people. For this reason, some modern Jewish feminists have reclaimed Bilhah and Zilpah as matriarchs. For me, this was a revelation. I had never really considered how Judaism and feminism could overlap. At first, it almost seemed wrong for feminists to make their own assertions about 1,000-year-old practices, but then I thought more about the fact that the Torah was written by men, which means that our most important text is biased from inception. I thought about how there are 2 versions of the Amidah in some prayer books, with only the more progressive one including the first 4 matriarchs' names. We could continue this tradition by claiming Bilhah and Zilpah as matriarchs. I'd always thought of Jewish faces as empowering ones. Most of the people who bolstered my Jewish education were women, including my rabbi. For me, synagogue was always the place where everyone was truly equal, because my community made such an effort to be inclusive and accepting. Reflecting on this, I now recognize that it's Jewish feminists who have made Judaism more equal for me, and it's my job now to continue this work. I've come to realize that being a Jewish feminist means elevating women, from those from our sacred texts who have been forgotten, like Bilhah and Zilpah, and Jewish women today. Now I have the honor of introducing my fellow Pennsylvanian, Daniela Shear. When I first met Daniela, I could tell that she was nice and sweet and the kind of person that you'd want to be friends with. And I was totally right, but she's also so much more. She's whip smart and hilarious, self-aware, quietly confident in a way I really admire. I can and have talked with her for hours. I know we all really looked forward to seeing Daniela at retreats so we could hear her wild stories about her family and her school and her neighborhood, which she all told in a totally nonchalant way. She made this cohort really special. So without further ado, it's Daniela.
Dear Phyllis, I have wanted to be an architect for as long as I can remember. What started as playing with Legos and blocks turned into a dream for my future. Growing up, I never thought that being a girl would hold me back. I wanted to be a famous architect and a mother. My mom is a doctor and has always done a great job of balancing a demanding job in her family. The women in my life have shown me that maintaining both a successful career and a rich family life is possible. As I got older, I looked for more architect role models and was discouraged to discover that there were so few women at the forefront of the field. I wanted to know why there were so few female architects that I knew about. I found out that one of the main problems is that because of how long it takes to become a licensed architect, people are starting their careers right around the time that many women start having kids. There are just as many women as men in architecture school, but only a small percentage become licensed. In many professions, especially ones that are male-dominated, family is seen as a weakness. I've heard stories from women in STEM fields whose coworkers advise them not to put pictures of their children on their desks because it reinforces stereotypes that women are obsessed with children and families. Phyllis, you became an architect in 1963 when the field was even less hospitable to women than it is now. You worked with Ludwig Mies van der Rohe on the Seagram building, which is when you decided to pursue architecture. You were a founding member of the conservation organization Heritage Montreal, and you served as its first president from 1975 to 1983. In 1979, you founded the Canadian Centre for Architecture to promote public awareness about the importance of the field. I'm a young Jewish woman who wants to be an architect, and your story inspires me. You are a powerful example of a successful Jewish female architect, and your impact in this field shows me that I can do the same. You balanced many projects and responsibilities throughout your career, just like my mom balanced work and family. With both of you as my role models, I feel unstoppable. Now I would like to introduce you to Dorka Corwin. I feel so lucky that over the course of the year, I have gotten to know her as a writer, editor, and friend. Dora is one of the most interesting people I've ever met, and I always look forward to hearing her stories about life in LA. Her writing is poetic, insightful, and fun to read. Her feedback is thoughtful and kind, and I'm so happy that we were in Rising Voices together.
My grandfather means something different to each and every person he's met. To some, he's kindness, always putting others before himself, no matter the circumstances. To others, he's community, building a network so wide that everyone he runs into is an old friend. To his parents, he was a miracle, not predicted to survive long past birth or to live to create all that he has in his lifetime. To me, he's all of these things stitched together into one simple phrase, L'Ador Vador. This phrase has been familiar to me for as long as I can remember, but as I've grown, it's come to mean many different things. It wasn't until studying for my bat mitzvah and analyzing my assigned Torah portion, Terumah, that I realized these words meant from generation to generation and began to understand how they relate to my life. 3 generations of my family have worshipped in the sanctuary in which I became a bat mitzvah. As I received the Torah from my father and held it in my arms during my bat mitzvah service, I established a deeper connection with L'Ador Vador. I would be nowhere without my close-knit, compassionate, and philanthropic nuclear family, and we as a family would be nowhere without the guidance and wisdom of my grandfather. L'Ador Vador acquired new significance when I trained to become a junior cantor at my temple and led Rosh Hashanah family services for the first time in 2016. As I called out the words I knew so well and hundreds of people responded with excitement, I watched as my grandfather beamed with pride and cheerfully clapped along to the rhythm. His commitment to our family's Jewishness inspired a new generation of Jewish leaders like myself. I wouldn't be who I am today without my grandfather. He is a real-life sanctuary who is mobile and flexible like the tabernacle. He creates community wherever he goes, takes those who do not have as much as he does under his wing, preserves memories of the past, and paves the way for a better future for his children and for his grandchildren. Papa, your miracles give us reason to live. L'Ador Vador. I'm now going to introduce Rachel. Rachel is one of the most thoughtful and inclusive people I've ever met. Her bubbly personality has been a great asset to the dynamic of our group, and I've learned so much from her stories and from her blog posts, especially the ones about her trip to Israel. I'm so lucky to have been able to get to know her this year, and I hope you get a taste of her passionate and eloquent voice through the piece she reads today.
The first moment it hit me that Israel is my new reality, that I would be spending the next 4 months with these 60 teens as part of the NIST EIE program, was our first Shabbat together when we went to the hotel. We walked to the main section and were almost immediately split up by gender. I approached the wall, the sounds of singing and prayer from the men's side in stark contrast to the near silence on the women's side. There were 2 teenage girls next to me, standing on stools and peering across the barrier, looking longingly at the dancing circles of men. I tried to ignore my increasing discomfort about the gender divide and focus on the fact that I was, arguably, in the holiest place for the Jewish people. When I finally reached the wall, I placed my hand on it, and everything around me disappeared. I ran my fingers over the notes in the cracks of the wall, overcome with emotion. Hundreds of people come here every day, each regarding this wall with individual significance. The power of this was not lost on me, and in that moment, I felt more connected to my Judaism than ever before. I opened my eyes, and my surroundings returned. The sound of the men singing and dancing, the sight of the two young girls on their tiptoes, and the eerie silence on the women's side. The weight returned to my shoulders. That night, back in my room, I stared at the ceiling and tried to sort everything out. I felt a shift in my views, but I couldn't articulate what it meant. I said to my roommates, I'm angry and frustrated, but I'm also so spiritually fulfilled. I don't know how to feel. I didn't need to say anything else. They immediately knew what I was talking about. Since that night, my comfort in questioning the world around me has increased. This moment of discomfort, discoupled with true spiritual awakening, helped me realize that it's completely possible to support an institution while also questioning it. This experience didn't make me any less Jewish, nor any less feminist, but rather strengthened my connections to both entities.
I'm going to read the introduction that Rachel wrote for Emma. The next person up is Emma. Getting to know her over the past year has been amazing. She exudes a contagious energy that makes being around her so fun! Exclamation point. She has a unique balance of humor and intelligence that leaves interactions with her hilarious and invigorating. She is also the sweetest. She comments on all of our blog posts and always has a kind word to say.
Dear Izzy, in the past year, a lot has changed in the world. And all of these changes, many scary, have inspired me to try my hardest to tell you the truth about the reality that girls once lived in and the reality we live in today. So I'm going to tell you about Gloria Steinem. Gloria said, a feminist is anyone who recognizes the equality and full humanity of women and men. Gloria Steinem is recognized as one of the foremothers of the women's liberation movement, which emerged in the late 1960s in response to political, social, and economic inequality between men and women. Gloria is a writer, speaker, political activist, and intersectional feminist visionary. Izzy, this woman fought for your right to be equal to boys. Imagine being told that you can't play football just because you're a girl. Gloria fought to make sure that you can kick butt on the field. Gloria said, we are still identified by our looks instead of our hearts or heads. That's why it's so much better to break the rules. You're beautiful, but never forget how smart you are and what you're capable of. Gloria is a brilliant writer who has inspired millions of people with her words. You can do that too. Always remember the power that your words can hold. Gloria said, wherever there is anti-Semitism, I identify as a Jew. It's a harsh world out there, kiddo, but in times of injustice, it's never wrong to stick up for what you believe in. I hope you find the meaning and joy that I've found in Judaism. But more than anything, I hope that you'll always be proud of your Jewish heritage. Izzy, I want you to know that I'm here for you, but I'm not going to sugarcoat the world for you. When you encounter difficulties, I hope you'll remember this letter and Gloria's words. And here are a few words of my own as well. Don't forget that you come from a family of strong women and strong men who support strong women. So never hesitate to ask for help. We'll always have your back. This is Maur Cohen. Maur is very quiet and reserved, but her writing is strong and meaningful. She's eloquent and articulate, and when I read her work, I feel instantly smarter. I'm especially inspired by her activism for mental health and gun violence prevention. Getting to know her has been my absolute pleasure, and I look forward to working with her in the future.
I have this memory where I'm 5 and it's Thanksgiving, or I'm 12 and it's Hanukkah, or I'm 15 in AP World History. They're all the same memory, and there are more. Almost every year of my public school education, there has been some kind of school celebration of cultural and ethnic diversity. The common factor in these celebrations is food. So there's a point in each celebration when the student stands up, presents their contribution, and says, my mom helped me make this, or I made this with my mom. While these celebrations are about diversity, this is an obvious commonality. How do we go about honoring these women and their contributions while also realizing that for many women, the goal is to break free from these traditional gender roles? I've spent hours in my synagogue's kitchen with women making latkes or chicken soup for unwell temple members, and listening to the score sheet of whose son got into which college. There I learned a separate set of Jewish customs, those pertaining to how to prepare food. Some of these, such as the imperative cracking of eggs into separate bowls before mixing them in, come from the kashrut. Others clearly evolved from hours spent by women in kitchens, the generations of women like us. For example, one must never prepare food for friends or family without some kind of music playing. This experience, combined with my experience with these school events, has made me realize how much my view of food was centered around women being in the kitchen. This shocked me initially, since I've always considered myself and my family to be completely egalitarian in terms of division of labor. But when I thought about it more, and thought about that time spent in the synagogue kitchen with so many women, I came to the conclusion that it comes down to a choice. So let's keep celebrating the women who choose to continue to practice and pass on kitchen culture. But let's also work on increasing the respect shown to kitchen culture and on expanding who gets to participate in it. By doing so, we'll bring gender equality not only outside of the domestic sphere, but inside it as well. I am now honored to introduce one of our cohort's energy sources. Shira is infinitely inspiring in her energy, passion, and unabashed nerdiness, and I promise coming from me, that's a compliment. Her personality is as warm as her native state of Arizona. Shira has a lot to say, so y'all better get ready to listen.
Man shall not lie with man as man does with woman, for it is an abomination. Leviticus 18:22. Religion isn't always easy. I often like to pretend it is. Buzzwords like interfaith and pluralism pervade my discussions about faith. But every now and again, I'm reminded that the history of my faith is not easy. Judaism was, in fact, built on questions. How do I find support as a woman from a faith founded on patriarchal texts? How do I reconcile ancient laws with the modern identity of queerness? There are plenty of arcane biblical laws that people don't practice anymore. How people go about ranking the importance of the many laws in our ancient texts largely remains a mystery to me. But it's apparent that the act of picking and choosing, cafeteria Judaism, if you will, is common practice. When discussing problematic parts of the Torah, like Leviticus 18:22, my head and my heart suffer a kind of cognitive dissonance. My Judaism is the most important part of who I am, but I have a difficult time reconciling the history of my faith with my identity as a bisexual woman. How do I practice my religion while remaining accepting and proud of my sexuality? How can I identify with the history in a text that directly contradicts my values? I believe that many traditional religious texts were written for the purpose of procreation. If homosexuality was considered an abomination, populations would, in theory, continue to grow, instead of being stinted by relationships that couldn't produce children. God does not hate me. No higher power came down from the sky and declared that I and people like me have no right to live and love like others. To believe this is to misunderstand the origins and intentions of religious texts, and to overlook their deeply loving central themes. I'm proud to be Jewish because of the struggles and the questions that come along with that identity. And I'm proud to be part of a progressive Jewish community that allows me to celebrate both my Jewish and queer identities.
Wow, okay. It's like I've read all these pieces before, but still like hearing them out loud, so many feelings. So it is now my honor to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Amelia Diamond. Amelia is a founding director of the Rising Voices Fellowship and currently serves as the executive director of the Jeremiah program in Boston. Jeremiah partners with low-income single mothers and their children to help transition families from poverty to prosperity 2 generations at a time. I had the pleasure of working with Amelia on Rising Voices when I first started at JWA, and since then she has been one of our core guest teachers, leading the fellows in workshops about power and privilege and racial justice. Amelia, thank you for all you've done and continue to do for this program, and we are eager and excited to hear from you today.
I'm going to start with a blog post I wrote on September, or that was published on September 12, 2013, A Place for Feminism, Rising Voices Fellowship. The first time someone called me a feminist, I was in the 3rd grade. I had raised my hand for the billionth time to voice my concern that we weren't talking enough about women and girls in history lessons. I was specifically upset that Cornelia Jackson, daughter of famed Newton, Massachusetts abolitionist William Jackson, was barely discussed in our class, despite having her diary, or a fictionalized account of it, my memory is hazy on the details, at our disposal. My teacher, trying to humor me, said she would look into it. My classmate, let's call him Brian, at the adjacent desk rolled his eyes and said, "Oh my God, can you stop being such a feminist?" I looked at Brian for a minute and then said, "No." I'm not sure I understood exactly what a feminist was or why Brian said it with such disdain in his voice. The class had been sighing when I'd raised similar concerns in the days prior, but no one had ever said anything until now. When I asked my mother what a feminist is, she told me it was the idea that women and men are equal, deserve equal rights and opportunities, and that it meant I was as good as any of my male classmates, if not better, per her mom bias. She said that not only was I a feminist, but so was she, and so was my father. The concept made sense to me. Of course, men and women are equal. So why had Brian said feminist as though it was synonymous with annoying? Years later, I wish I could say things have changed and that people no longer equate feminist with some kind of annoying or unwelcome voice of dissent, but unfortunately it's mostly the same. My feminism is part of the fabric of my identity, but it is still something many of my peers of all gender identities continue to shrug off as a label they're not fans of, even if they believe in the fundamentals. What I would have given as a teenager to have a community where I could talk, think, and write about feminism and wear the badge loud and proud. Since I didn't have that opportunity, we began the conversation about Rising Voices Fellowship. I secretly wished I could rewind my life so that I could be a junior in high school right this second. Not much has changed. So let me tell you how it started. About 6.5 years ago, a colleague approached me with a request. At the time, I was in my first year working at Prosdor, the pluralistic Hebrew high school program over at Hebrew College, which you can see right there. As the director of programming and initiatives, I was tasked with running our dynamic slate of teen programs, as well as finding new and creative ways to engage young people. So my then stranger but soon to be good friend Jordan, who was managing the JWA blog, asked me to have coffee with her. Something had happened with the CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch, I think. He had said something terrible about not wanting ugly or fat people to wear his clothes, and Jordan felt that this was something that the blog should address. We both agreed that neither of us should write it, being some number of years past our last Abercrombie & Fitch purchase, and we thought maybe someone younger should write it. She came to see if I had any young woman who would be a good fit to write. I did, of course, since the world is full of amazing young Jewish women with something important to say. But as we sat in Pete's, just down the hill in Newton Center, our wheels started spinning. Yes, I could easily give Jordan names of some Prosdor students to write the piece, but that would be super easy. But we made our lives a little bit more complicated. Our conversation led us to a sort of far out idea. What if we created a core of teen voices to add to the blog? What if we held space for young writers to connect, discuss, write, and learn together? What would it look like to bring together female-identified Jewish teens who really wanted to improve their skills while building relationships with others like them? And thus, Rising Voices was born. And that year, we recruited 6 fellows to our inaugural class, and 5 years ago, they graduated the program. It looked much different then. The fellows were from New England. We only met in person for 2 full days spread out over the year. There were no peer editors or overnights, but the idea seemed to stick because the writing was pretty good. So we grew the program, started expanding, started writing curriculum, and here we are. The 5th cohort of Rising Voices Fellows graduates today. I would have had no idea that the conversation in the coffee shop with Jordan that day would have led to this. I firmly believe, though I might be biased, that this program is one of the most unique, exciting, and important ones for teens in the country. Enough about that, let's talk about you. To you. What a year to be a young woman in America. We all know what's happened. Others have referred to it. We've seen the Me Too movement bring stories to the fore that were previously untold. We've watched teens lead the march for their lives across their country to fight for safety. Faith leaders are calling on us to protest seats of power every single week through Moral Monday. It is a moment in our country's history in which the voices of the people are more important than ever. Our voices, your voices, these are gaining ground. Recently, I came across a piece that highlighted the importance not only of speaking out, but of listening truly and deeply at this critical moment when the voices of the marginalized and disenfranchised are more accessible and louder than ever. Quote, "In these current circumstances, one must pick a side. I stand unhesitatingly and unwaveringly with the women, not out of virtue or integrity or high moral outrage, as much as I'd like to say so, but because late in life, I met one extraordinary woman with a particularly awful story to tell, who introduced me to other extraordinary women with equally awful stories. I am grateful to them for their courage and inspired by them. That doesn't make me any more enlightened than any other man who has begun listening and paying attention. It does make me, I hope, slightly less stupid." End quote. These beautiful words are from the late, great Anthony Bourdain. Of course, Tony is on our minds lately, having been lost to suicide just days ago. And a lot of people are talking about his talents and his creations, and even more people are talking about how he treated others on his travels. Anthony Bourdain loved people. He ate their food, learned everything he could about their culture and cuisine, and engaged on a deeply personal level. And the thing he did best, I think, is he listened. People who had never been on camera before, never given a platform before, were being heard when he showcased their humanity. And he wasn't there to say, "Oh, how quaint," or "this is so exotic." He was there to listen and learn and expand his own sense of what the world needs. He gave us such a gift in this lesson, which was the piece he wrote in response to specifically the allegations against Mario Batali and others in the kitchen world. So he gave us this gift of a lesson that, yes, our voices are important, that we must raise them up together as we resist and always speak truth to power. But our voices, which carry some inherent privilege, are even better when we've spent some time listening as well. For example, something we read together just a few months ago, the women leading Time's Up took inspiration and guidance from an open letter sent to them by 700,000 female farm workers. The letter thanked the women of Hollywood for their bravery in speaking out, but they also shed a light on their own struggle against harassment and assault, saying, "We do not work under bright stage lights or on the big screen. We work in the shadows of society in isolated fields and packing houses that are out of sight and out of mind for most people in this country. Even though we work in very different environments, we share a common experience of being preyed upon by individuals who have the power to hire, fire, blacklist, and otherwise threaten our economic, physical, and emotional security." By listening to these words and building their action plan around them, the Time's Up campaign is more intersectional and thus stronger. When we listen to those who are normally silenced, we're better for it. And that's what makes your work so important. Not only are you sharing underheard voices with the world, but you have the opportunity to amplify others as well. Left turn. When God appeared to King Solomon in a dream and asked him what he would like to be given, Solomon required Lev Shomeya, literally a listening heart, to judge people. The choice of words is significant. Solomon's wisdom was his ability to listen, to sense what was left unsaid. It is common, we know, to find leaders who speak loud, and sadly, very rare to find leaders who listen. And we know that leaders who listen are more well-rounded, more empathetic, and more effective. Listening is a radical act of compassion, listening to seek understanding even more profound. When we act by listening, the rest follows naturally. Listening requires giving up preconceived ideas, judgments, and desires in order to allow space to hear what is being said. True listening calls for deep respect and genuine curiosity, as well as a willingness just to be there and share stories. Listening opens the space, allows us to hear what needs to be done in that moment. Rising Voices Fellows have written about everything from hair straightening in The Bachelor to slam poetry, grandparents, and Jewish ritual. You're joining a group of alumna who have shared deeply personal struggles about their relationship to Judaism, who have spoken out about issues that matter to them, who have made us laugh and cry with their writing. You've spent countless hours writing and rewriting, editing, learning, and sharing. Be proud that you're part of this pioneering program, that you are standing alongside young women who are in schools and universities and programs across the world, sharing their wisdom through writing, activism, poetry, music, and art. We silly adults often are entrenched deeply in our ways of thinking, and our flexibility is stunted. I agree with Larissa, and as I often say, if we just listened to teenagers, the world would really be in better shape. So lead us. Show us how to listen, to learn, to grow, and to share with passion and compassion. Follow the example of Anthony Bourdain, of the Women of Time's Up, and use whatever platform you find yourself standing on, not only to shout your words, but to bring others up to that platform to shout alongside you. Because yes, we are listening more to women's voices now, but it will take the next generation to teach us what to do with those voices and how to allow it to affect change. And who better to teach us than you, inspiring young people with an openness for that change, who are committed to a better world and aren't afraid to tell us exactly what they think it looks like. Go forth and write and listen and amplify and make us all better. I'll be cheering you from the sidelines, joining the march towards progress every time you call.
Amelia, thank you so much as always for your inspiring and powerful words. I think you've given the fellows and all of us a lot to think about. I'm gonna quickly do a quick stage rearrange and move this out of the way. So we've reached the point where we're going to present our graduating fellows with their certificates and a JWA t-shirt of their choosing. If you feel as you're watching this a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, do not worry. You can go on our website and buy a t-shirt for yourself. Don't worry, and you'll get to see all of them paraded in front of you. Shameless plug for our shop, jwa.org/shop. Okay. So before I start calling up our fellows, I did just want to read what we write on the certificate. So it says, Rising Voices Fellowship Certificate of Completion is presented on this day, June 10th, 2018, to fellow, in this case, Sarah. Mazel tov on your bravery, exploration of self, developing your voice, and leading by example. And signed by me and our executive director, Judith Rosenbaum. So the way this will work is my friend and colleague Bella will hand me a certificate and t-shirt. I will read the name of the fellow. Please come up and please stay up so we can get some nice group shots of all of you at the end. Kara Sherman. Daniela Shear. Dorka Corwin. Josephine Rossman. Sophia Heller. Minna Stein. Sophia Gardensworth. Emma Mayer. Julia Clardy. running out of space. Okay. To Maur Cohen. Natalie Harder. So, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, I present to you the Rising Voices class of 2017-2018. Got their picture. It'll take a couple minutes. We'll do some more after you guys can sit down. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for being here. I'm Rachel King, the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Jewish Women's Archive, and I'm the closer, so I get to say again, Mazel Tov to all of you. We are so proud of you. We eagerly read your writing every month, and we get very excited when the stats look really good and we see how many readers you've got month to month, and we're just really proud to include your voices on the JWA blog and to have you representing the Jewish Women's Archive out in the world. So congratulations on your hard work and your commitment, and we look forward to hearing where you go. A premise of the Rising Voices Fellowship from the start has been to encourage young Jewish women to learn from feminist role models and to be inspired by the Jewish women who came before them. But what we've discovered since year one with Amelia is that it also works the other way around, that we are so inspired by you. We learn from your ideas, from your writing, and from your vision of the way the world should be. And for that, we're really grateful. So thank you to all of you. On behalf of JWA, I just want to say a few other thank yous. I want to thank the families for supporting your daughters throughout the year and for being here today. And I wanted to give a shout out to, is it Judy, who came in on the red eye last night from the West Coast just for this event? So that's dedication. And as Amelia said, this is the 5th year of the fellowship, which means that we have a really nice community of alumni of this program who are out. Most of them are in college now, but they're doing great things with the skills that they've learned here today. And there's a really nice community that's in touch with one another. So we're really excited to welcome you to the JWA alumni. I want to say thank you to Amelia for starting this in the first place and for this really amazing speech today. So we have some flowers for you. We're also very grateful to the JWA board, who has been incredibly supportive of this program from the start. And who really believe in it and have helped it grow. I really want to thank Roz for being such an amazing supporter of JWA and a friend of ours for many years. Thank you for being here today and for everything you've done. And we also want to thank the funders of the program, in particular the Hadassah Foundation and the Phyllis Backer Foundation, and many individual supporters who also see the value of this program and its uniqueness. And if any of you are interested in supporting the program, your program, little program booklet tells you where to go on the JWA site. But we thank you for your support in all ways of the Rising Voices Fellowship. We also want to thank JWA staff and our new summer interns who are here today helping out, and say a big thank you to the staff for everything they do throughout the year, Bella and others, to help the program and on retreats. And last but not least, of course, we have to say thank you to Larissa and Nikki, who was here, but I think she had to leave with her baby, who put so much love into this program. I mean, she really loves you, and when you're not around, the way she talks about you is so moving, and she puts hours of time and dedication into the program, and really, really cares. So thank you, Larissa, for everything. You're amazing. So in closing, to our wonderful fellows and new alumni, we hope that you'll nourish the skills and the perspectives and the friendships that you've developed this year. Please stay in touch, be active in the alumni network, and keep writing and voicing your opinions. Also, consider continuing to write for the JWA blog. We want your voices to stay part of the JWA family, and we believe in what you have to say. So keep blogging for us. We look forward to seeing you become tomorrow's feminist leaders. And I hope you'll take my job someday. Come back and work with and for JWA, and absolutely stay in touch. May you go from strength to strength. Thank you. And now there are cookies and
Please feel free to stay and schmooze. I know I didn't really get to say hi to very many people when I came in. I'd love to get to say hi to all the parents and their guests right here. I know, fellas, we're going to want to take some more pictures. I think someone will come back.
Should we do that right now?
Let's do that
Get
now.
it out of the way.
Yeah, let's do that now.
She's like Jewish.
Yeah.
At first I was only right eye. I don't know if this is the Stop saying that.
Most violent element in society.
No way. I know. Maur, this is my boss. If you ever need anybody, we're here. Because you're in California. Yeah. And Monday almost a weekend. Yeah. I love
Should we have our face called this entire life?
Closer and tighter.
Definitely feel like, oh, well done. Yeah, no, it's amazing. Thank you very much.
One more.
Thank you.
You want to get it tighter so that we can get closer up. Yeah, like 2 rows.
I feel strongly about which
You're the first row.
Larissa, you're in the first row. I'm sure she's coming. I mean, she's been a lot of time 2 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Looks so good.
I know, I'm so sad now.
What are the wild stories? Hey, tell me later.
Okay, I have a question.
What's like a
normal hot for someone? Yeah, well, now it was like, so yeah. Are you younger? Somebody was recognize you? Okay, yeah, I'm only like, he's doing okay. We're sending these. Like to get over So, your money actually you would buy 5 minutes by your traffic section, 5 minutes of spotting traffic section, and 5 minutes of I have no idea. One sophomore, some juniors. So
Same idea.
Yeah,
I know.
Can I just knock my arms through your balls? How's the look? Why is it so small? What girls? I know. Why didn't you get I already have the shirt. Why would you even have that? This year, we were just like really made up. I wrote about her like to getting all these meetings.
I hate to be a
we know. Yes. No, one of us should be on the side. Okay.
Right, so no, you guys, you look like a college acapella.
Wow, it's like perfectly symmetrical.
Wow. Good.
So are you spending some time out here? Oh, I'm definitely This is actually what I wore to I wore the root. So many things we were trying to work out, and that's yeah, exactly. I remember the
Yeah, we drive back.
Thank you so much for
Oh, yeah. You heard. She's like, I can do tomorrow. And I definitely like other people are already out of school, and then we're just like, like, you live in a hot place. Right. Yeah. No, but I just start. Yeah, we start. Yeah, no, we get 2 weeks off. You're both and mine is 182, and we have 183. We have a week for Thanksgiving, 2 weeks in summer, 2 weeks on the other half. Oh, yes, that's on you. I'll let you know. Oh my God, yes. That's good. Even though we're not yet, or in the beginning. Yeah. Hi, it was so fun. It was so long. If you need anything for I'll just like seriously. That's super close to okay, so when you're in Florida, I'll get to the I'm here and I'm so very true. Wait, what is it like? I guess if you do it again, if you are depressed already, and then you're too, you need to come over now and or have stuff you want to get. So that gets okay. So we